I'm Justin Freemar, and I started my journey in the world of professional wrestling in 2006 as a referee. I've done almost everything but wrestle a match. After a long hiatus, I now have the chance to interview some of Arizona's up-and-coming wrestlers as I go with them beyond the top rope.
Fuck it, I'm laying the world now, or my world.
We stole the show in Benson. Remember Benson?
Seriously, good interview.
Hello, and welcome to Beyond the Top Rope, a no-holds-barred interview with Arizona's brightest superstars. And my guest today, he's ruthless, he's relentless, he's resilient, he's R3.
How you doing?
Good, how are you? It's been a long time.
It's been a very long time.
So, tell me what's going on nowadays with you.
Kind of catching up from all this pandemic stuff.
Yeah.
Continuous training. I'm actually helping out with the AWF Academy currently. And just trying to get out there, man. Just trying to catch up and get these dates going.
Yeah, I see on Instagram or Facebook and stuff that you're actively at the gym every day.
Yes.
You're letting people know, hey, I'm putting the work in. And
it's a partially that, and the other part is for a lot of the beginning of when I started, it was something that wasn't a part of my routine. So this is also, it's like me telling people, like, yo, this is my hard work. So, that's the way social media works now. And it's also another part showing people that are discouraged about going to the gym, whether it's an insecurity or whatever, to be like, hey, you can do it. It can be done. So I'm trying to pretty much spread a message of mental thickness.
Yeah,
so to
well,
speak.
that's your brand,
Yeah.
I believe. And we'll touch a little bit on that. No, you can plug. This is what this show's about. Plug what you want to plug, talk about what you want to talk about, because that's what it's all about. This is a platform here at Beyond the Top Rope. So I'm excited to offer that. And like I said, thank you for coming.
Of course.
So we're gonna rewind a little bit. Yes. I want to talk about growing up.
Oh boy.
Yeah, I want you to talk about your life a little bit. You're hailed from Gravelly Hills, California. That's actual place, right?
It is a place. So I'm from California, Los Angeles area. I usually it's San Fernando Valley, but I just say Los Angeles because a lot of people don't know San Fernando Valley. But I was born in a city called Lakeview Terrace. And in Lakeview Terrace, yes, in Lakeview Terrace, there's a superstitious hill where they say you park your car at the bottom of the hill, put it on neutral, and it goes uphill on its own.
Yeah.
So it's called Gravity Hills. Yeah. So when I was coming up with the where are you from kind of thing, I was thinking back and I'm like, that sounds pretty cool because it's technically the actual city I was born in. So it is cool. An actual place that exists.
Gotcha. So growing up, how long were you there for? How long were you in Gravity Hills?
Well, from there, I was born in Lakeview Terrace, moved to the San Fernando Valley, so grew up there, moved out here to Arizona after high school. There was a little time where from there I moved here for a few months, and it was kind of a blur because it wasn't the best of times.
Yeah.
But officially moved here was 2003, and I've been here in Arizona since then.
Okay. When did pro wrestling come into your life? When was it introduced?
Oh, man. I hate to do the cliche since I was a kid, but as long as I could remember, my uncle used to record on VHS tapes, all the shows and stuff, and whenever I would see him, he'd have a couple of tapes for me to watch. Obviously, we had the Blockbuster and stuff like that, so we'd rent VHS there. That's actually partially how I learned how to speak English, because I didn't learn how to speak English until I was 9 or 10.
Oh, wow.
So Ninja Turtles, X-Men cartoons, and WWF commentary is kind of how I started to learn how to.
Wow.
And, that's all it was. It was an escape from me. And I would go to my uncle's house. He'd pop in a VHS, watch pay-per-views or watch the shows, whatever, Saturday morning stuff. And the bigger shows that we couldn't get, he would record them for me and give me the tapes. So as long as I can remember, wrestling's been a part. Just there was a point in time where I was homeless, and obviously there's no television, so that's the only time I didn't watch wrestling. Other than that, since I could remember, wrestling has been a part of me growing up.
So growing up, who were some of your favorites that you liked watching?
I always tell, I have plenty of favorites, but I always tell people Hulk Hogan is the reason why I fell in love with wrestling, and The Undertaker is the reason why I wanted to become a wrestler. But the theatrics of like Macho Man and Andre the Giant was huge. So it was like Hogan, Macho, Jake the Snake, Andre were like all big leg parts.
In the 80s, the golden era is when you were getting into the wrestling.
Yeah, that's what I started watching.
I think that's some of the best time in wrestling. The 80s, the 90s, the early 2000s.
Right.
That's when I became a fan in 91. So SummerSlam 91 was the first pay-per-view I ever watched, and that still has an impression on me to this day. What about you? What was your first wrestling pay-per-view you got to watch live? It didn't have to, not even in person, but just
that I remember on tape. Yeah. Honestly, it was WrestleMania 1.
Wow, so you go back really far to like the beginning of everything.
Yeah, so it's like, because that was the year, WrestleMania 1 was the year I was born. So whenever, what I can remember is just him giving me tapes, and it was like those big events. I remember like watching all the WrestleManias coming up. My first live event, I don't remember much of it. I remember I cried when Hogan came out. And the only other thing I remember is Macho Man and Razor Ramon in a match, and
92.
Me getting pissed because Razor was beating the hell out of Macho's leg. So that's all I remember as far as the live experience. But pay-per-view wise on tape, I've been watching like all the Mania 1, Mania 2, all that stuff.
Do you have a favorite like of all time?
WrestleMania? Ooh, that's rough. I always said, until I started training to wrestle, I always said WrestleMania 9 was my favorite. And I don't necessarily know why, because I watched it back with like different eyes, and I was like, why'd you think that? I mean, it wasn't like the worst thing, but I was still, it was different than what I expected. I guess when you see it in a different perspective, from different eyes, it just hits you different. So 9 was the one I would claim for a while. Now I would probably say 25, just strictly because Undertaker and Shawn Michaels is, from that WrestleMania, is probably my favorite match.
They told an amazing story.
So I think that match alone makes that Mania for me like top.
Gotcha. So growing up, you're into wrestling, you're learning, you're getting excited about it. Did you ever do any backyard wrestling? I asked this to everybody, and everyone's answer is yes. It's something they're ashamed of, and you shouldn't be.
You know what? I'm not. I was at first, because it was such a shame kind of thing, and even nowadays, with the whole untrained, and we can do a whole discussion about that. But now, speaking right now, I'm not ashamed of it, because through all those experiences, I eventually made connections to get to where I'm at now. That's how I look at it. It sucks because a lot of things that I suffered body-wise, or damage that happened to my body, happened through that. So it was pretty much just like extra damage coming into actual training that could have been prevented. But yeah, I mean, when I was in California, we used to live in some townhouses, and one of my buddies was his mom was a manager, so we had keys. So we'd go into like the abandoned condos, and we'd beat each other up and do whatever we thought was wrestling throughout there, and do all that. So that's how that started. No, sadly no. I mean, well, maybe thankfully no, but yeah, so we started doing that stuff, and I was the biggest wrestling guy. So I think they just wanted to do like the physical fighting stuff, because nobody else was really into it as much as I was. And then from there, I'm sure Alex Sawyer's talked about this, but meeting him, we dabbled in some backyard stuff and ended up getting an actual ring at a certain point, and did that. So that's kind of where that ended. But through that situation of having that ring, we met certain people, and that was a not a good experience at all. But through that not so good experience, I met somebody else who kind of helped me with more, quote, proper training, as far as like learning how to bump and learning how to run the ropes. And then through that connection, I found EXW.
Yes.
And then through that, I started making the flyer. So like pretty much it kind of like just became like a domino effect. So like I met Dexter Verity.
I remember him.
Through this crappy place. And then from there, because he went to EXW, I went to EXW. And then I made a flyer for fun. And Sergio Vega was like, did you make this flyer? Like he just asked generally on social media who made this flyer. So I made a connection of making flyers for them through that. And then when we went to that Scottsdale place, what will become our school.
Yes.
We went there. Joe Vernola, the ones who like record the shows weren't there, and they saw me with the camera because I would record Dexter's matches, and they're like, "Hey, do you want to record the entire show?" Became a camera guy, and then from there, I mentioned once to Brian Barnett, the promoter of that place. I mentioned to him that I wanted to get in the ring, and he's like, "Well, we're starting up. We're doing this," because I think at that point it was just Lawrence Graves and Julian Jameson, I think his name was, and they were doing stuff at the Independence Gym.
Yes.
So they were actually opening the school.
That's where they started.
So now that they were opening, it's like, hey, start here. So everything kind of led up to that moment. So as far as it being shameful, do I watch some of the stuff that's recorded and like cringe? Very much so. But looking at it as far as like the moments that happened that led to where we're at now, I don't regret it.
Yeah, and you shouldn't have any regret because that's what got you to the dance in the first place.
Yeah.
So you were going over how you got into the business. When was this, like 2013, 2012?
It was, I mean, from as far as like actual training, it was 2012-ish is when I was doing, because I did camera and flyers for almost a year.
Oh, wow.
And
so
I think it was.
Your stripes at that time.
Yeah, because they were a celebrity theater when I first started doing the flyers.
Oh, okay.
And then they moved to the school because then it became FSW Arizona. We went through a bunch of name changes.
Yeah.
So in that time I was doing all that, and we had Alex's ring in someone's backyard. So we were with I don't want to mention names in case I get pissed or offended, but there was a group of us that knew more than this place I had experienced before. And I learned like super basic stuff, like how to take a bump, how to run the ropes, and super basic psychology according to these guys who have been around for a while. So that kind of got me started in that aspect. But when I started training, I had gallbladder surgery in late 2012. And then January 2013 is when I came in and I was like, I want to actually do it. And I remember Lawrence the first day asked me if I had any training, and I said no, because in my mind I'm like, I don't want to count anything I did in a not professional training facility as training. So I said no, and I got in trouble for that because he put me through the grinder and he's like, well, how do you know how to run ropes? How do you know how to bump? So then I told him. So it was one of those like, good for you for not counting this backyard crap as an experience, but you lied when I asked you, so I'm gonna put you through hell.
I can only imagine what that was like.
It was a lot of rope running and a lot of bumps that first day, but I mean, I was thankful for it, and it was a good experience. But that's January 2013 is where I started training for professional wrestling.
How long training did you get before you actually had your first actual match? Tell us about like your training process and then your first match.
I mean, I feel like that backyard stuff, as far as like the post training, like the training aspect of in that backyard, I think that helped push me a little bit because I already knew like very basic stuff as far as the bumping and the rope running and stuff like that. So it was like 3 months before, because my first match was April 13th, 2013. I remember that date. And it was against Super Rich, which was another guy who was in our training class.
I remember. I think you were feuding with Super Rich when I started showing up.
We had a whole thing, yeah.
How long did that feud last?
I want to say maybe like 6 months or so.
Yeah, because I came around, I think, in the fall.
Yeah,
so.
It was a while. And it was cool because it was like you get to start off with the feud, whether it was a trainee or not, but we started off with like building some kind of story, you know what I mean? So that was cool. But the training stuff was January. And we were going to training 2 or 3 days a week with Lawrence. And then we had people pop in, like Navajo would pop in. Lion was there quite a bit. Sim Snuka, because he was doing work with us, he would pop in once in a while. So that was cool to just have like all these knowledgeable people, like all this knowledge like thrown at us. And I feel like I advanced a little. I caught on quick because of the stuff I had already learned. It was just more of fine-tuning and doing it the right way and figuring out the psychology, which Lawrence just like brought out. So it was intense. I mean, the training was rough, and it's funny because everybody like that trained at ICW, like Sergio Vega and stuff. I'm like, man, this Lawrence from back then was like super strict. So I'm like, we get him, and I was like, whoa, if he was this way there.
I mean,
but
back when I tried to be a wrestler, he was side suplexing us.
Yeah,
and like he was doing it until we were pissing blood.
Right.
That's how much of a machine Lawrence was.
And I mean, it's great. I mean, I am thankful for him because we had I think we had like a really good group of guys. We had Lawrence, and then at that time, I felt like, especially looking now, I felt like Graves was the assistant in a way, because I know he was trained before us, because Julian at that point had left. So it was like Graves was the guy he was training pretty much before this whole thing started. And Graves' mind for like psychology and like how to like technique is like out of this world. So you have Lawrence, who can bring the best out of you specifically, because you look at our group, you have like Hammerstone, Evan Daniels, Jay would pop in, Jay Garland would pop in, Pete the Heat, me. So you have like all these different personalities, and if you look at us now, like none of us are the same. Oh. And Lawrence is a big part, if not the biggest part, in my opinion, of bringing that out and helping us fine tune psychology-wise. And then obviously with Graves, just in the in-ring stuff, like and I think this was pre like jiu-jitsu. So for him to have this type of knowledge with like hold to hold and stuff like that is like insane. So just getting all that stuff, I think I just like wanted to soak it up. Obviously we had our moments where I'm like, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't know if I'm like good enough to do this. I had one night where we were doing a heat drill and nobody was making a sound. And me and Rich were the last two. And I think because I was the biggest guy and because we were the last one, so they've probably had it at that point, Lawrence and Lion was there, stopped everything and just ripped into me like never before. And at that point I was one of like the super shy guys, so like just so embarrassed to be yelled at in front of my class and everybody. And it was like a come to Jesus moment kind of thing. And it was like, do you want this? Do you not? If you don't, the door's right there. Like a bunch of stuff. It's like your big ass should be screaming and yelling and grunting. There's not a peep coming out of you. Just went into me. And they're like, you can either leave or you can do it again and do it right. And I just remember grabbing, everybody was on the apron. It's funny because everybody's on the apron like on one corner. And I remember grabbing Rich by the throat, yelling the loudest scream I've ever done through him, on that corner, and like just seeing everybody just jump off. And it was like I just released and let it all out. And at the end, Lion just comes up and is like, "Good job, that's what I wanted." It's like, you son of a bitch. But it was, I needed it because now I'm big on that. So like now when I talk to like new guys, like that's a big one for me. It was like vocalize and do this, like that stuff like really stuck out to me. And for me, it was a moment of, wow, am I not good at this? Like, is this not for me? But then, like, I pushed myself. So it was a moment for me to realize, no matter the insecurities or anything, that I really wanted it because I kept pushing through. And I didn't just say, nah, I think I'm done now.
And so from that point on, you didn't really have any of those internal struggles? Or were they...
Oh, totally.
Did they come around here and there?
Yeah, it was a lot. I felt I got more confident because Lawrence is good at bringing that out. And it's more like, this is kind of how the business is. So through those experiences and the tests and everything, I feel like we all gained our confidence and just getting better. Like our group got better, so I think we all like felt as a group, I'm like, man, like we're gonna do this. So the confidence got up there. I mean, it's been like a continuous struggle as far as like whether it's in the ring or not, as far as gaining that confidence, because you still have those moments now. But I think that moment was, for me, I'm like, well, if I'm not going to quit now, then I'm not going to. Yeah. So now I'm going to keep pushing harder, and I'm going to give Lawrence the finger by doing everything that he says I can't do and not complaining about it. And that's pretty much, like, that was like my thing from that point on. So.
And I think you training people, that probably helps a lot more with your confidence.
Right, yeah.
As well.
Yeah, I mean, I've always helped Lawrence, like when the academy started, and he took over. This was years ago, 8-9 years ago. I helped him out. So I would still go to the training and I would still do my part as far as like wanting to fine tune and keep learning myself. But I was like the more advanced guy, so I would help him as well. So I think that kind of helped me like on all ends as far as like the experience in general. And then when this opportunity came up, obviously again, that confidence, I'm like, am I ready? Can I? But then I talked to a few people that know what they're doing. And they just pretty much said to just teach them what you know, what you've learned. And, you know, if you can bring people in to have experience, I can teach them something a little different, do it. So I'm super open to that aspect. I'm not the my way or the highway kind of guy. It's just like, I will show you what I know and we will master that. And if anybody wants to come, is willing to come, or if I have connections with people who can come and help you see like a different side or teach you something that I can't, gladly. So that's been my way of attacking this.
Do you ever come across people that are like, you look at them and you're like, no?
Yes. I hate doing it because I feel I was that guy. Like when I walked in, I feel I was the guy that because Lawrence and Graves whispered, we're going to make this guy quit today. And I mean whispered because they wanted me to hear it. And they were like, hey, we're going to make this guy quit today. So it was like one of those things of, I was a guy that wasn't supposed to make it. And this is from like growing up, childhood, from the insecurities, from every aspect of my life on that to that point. I was the guy who was not supposed to make it. The way it looked, everything. So I don't like bursting bubbles, but being in the business as long as I have to this point, it's one of those things to where you kind of do see, and to me, I judge more on work ethic. So I won't look at someone and just visually be like, nah, you're not going to make it. To me, I'm like, I'll give you a week, or let me have a conversation with you. Let's see what your work ethic is. And from there, I'll judge you're not going to make it unless something drastically changes. So there's definitely people that whether I've come into someone else's class and just kind of observed or watched, and then I just see like their demeanor, or when someone's like, hey, let's do this, and there's no effort. I mean, like, to me, if you're trying to be a professional wrestler and you go to training, but you're not trying your best to be a part of everything and learning, like, do you really want to be, you know what I mean? Like, if you only have X amount of hours a week to train, to train to do something that you want to do, but you don't take advantage of that time, to me, I'm like, well, do you really want it? Or if you're not putting the work that you're supposed to out of the facility, do you really want it? If you're complaining and crying about it, do you really want it? So I look at all those things, and from those things I can say no. And obviously there are some that you kind of like put through training, and you can kind of see maybe just physically, like skill wise, or just your body just won't let you continue or do this. So from all those, you can kind of take a guess and be like, yeah, this person's probably not. But like I said, I don't want to be like that person to do it unless I really have to. If someone just doesn't care, and then I'll be like, if something doesn't change, this is not for you. It's a big safety thing. I'm big on like the safety thing, and there's like such entitlement sometimes, and I don't like it. So it's just, I think there's a lot. I always try to push people to not try and just coast or just be good enough, or this is it, you know. Like, everybody has their own journey. That's the one thing I tell people. I was like, compare yourselves to the best of where you want to be, you know, because not everybody has a journey. There could be like a superstar in the making, but maybe they don't want to travel more than like 2 or 3 states. Maybe, you know, but then you look at other people that just want to go everywhere. Like, everybody has their own journey. So it's more of, where do you want to be? And wherever you want to be, wherever you want to go, that's what you should look at, and look at the best in that section is what I tell everybody. But you have to have some kind of work ethic to get there.
So you see a lot of yourself in some of these students, and that kind of propels you to...
Yeah. Oh yeah, like especially like the bigger dudes. I remember I did, before I took over the half of the week at AWF, I went to one of the showcases and I kind of saw what they were doing, and the first thing I did is I pulled all the bigger dudes to the side, and I asked all of them, like, do you work out? How often? And I told them, like, take it from me right now, work on your body. Because I'm like, I don't want to say I wasted years, but I also want to say I wasted like four, probably half of the time I've been around, with either making excuses or just the insecurities. Like, I let that hold me back. And I feel I still did well enough locally and did all that, but I feel I could have gone so much further if what I'm doing now would have started back then. And I had the help. So there's no excuse as far as, like, I didn't have anybody to help me. Like, I had Hammerstone and Evan be like, come to the gym with us. But in my mind, I was so psyched out of, I look like I should be lifting this much. So if I go and I don't, it's going to be embarrassing. But I never did anything to get to the point where I could lift that much. So it was just, I just screwed myself over, you know. Brett screwed Brett. Charles screwed Charles. And it wasn't until I got my act together and I went with Evan, I was like, I'll go. And because he won't judge me with whatever my limit is. And from that point on, there was a couple of like bumps, and then finally got the confidence to go by myself and to do this, and I know what I'm doing. And at a certain point, I was like, this is, like, I enjoy this now. And it's thanks to wrestling. I don't think if I ever started training for wrestling, I don't know if I'd be like a gym guy or going to the gym. I don't know. I know wrestling pushed me to get to that point. But because of that, now I enjoy it. Like, it's a part of like my routine. Even if I don't want to go, I go because I know it'll make me feel better. So now it's not like I make no excuses to not go unless I just physically cannot. And even when that happens, I still go. I hyperextended my elbow a couple months ago. Well, somebody who's not properly trained hyperextended my elbow a couple of months ago, and I still went. And it sucked because my weight went from, here to like here. And I already knew that ahead of time, obviously, when it happened, but then experiencing it in person and not being able to lift, like, just like crushed me. But I still went and I did what I could, and I asked people, like I talked to Steve and I talked to other guys that I know in the business now, like, if you have experienced this injury, what would you do? Should I relax? Should I do this? So I started doing like little, band exercises and stuff like that. So I still stayed. I did a lot of cardio. So I still went, even like this, just with whatever limits I could. And I'm finally getting back to full strength. It still gets a little extra sore, but I think in wrestling, when you get like an injury, it kind of always stays with you no matter what.
It lingers.
Yes. But I also feel like I wouldn't have got my strength this quick if I would have stayed at home and just put a sling on or something like that.
Just kept being diligent and saying, hey, I'm not going to let this keep me down. And that's kind of what
you have to. And that's why I tell these guys, like these bigger guys, I'm like, do it now. Realize this now from someone who made the excuse for so long. Do it now. Get it together, because you expect it to be a certain way if you're going to look this way. And I'm like, that's just the reality of things. So I do see some parts in them, but I also don't want to make excuses for them, and I don't want to baby them. So if they don't, this was like 6-7 months ago. So if I still see them and they're still the same and they're not doing it, I don't have any sympathy for you. I'm not going to feel bad for you. And I tell them the same thing, because that's what I had to tell myself to get my crap together. You know what I mean? Can I cuss here?
No, go ahead.
Oh, okay. That's what I had to do to get my shit together.
Yeah, I mean, it's trust me, Alex,
I
like
bet.
a sailor.
So
Pete, same thing.
Oh, I bet.
You got big shoes to fill here. Come on.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. So that's what I had to do to get my shit together. So I do that with them, and now there's one kid. I was his first match at that showcase, and his name is Bryce Saturn, and he has taken anything anybody's told him. Like, you can see a drive in his actions, because I was his first match. And then from there, we talked, and he said, what do I have to do? What do you think I have to do? And I would come to trainings, and there was a little bit of arrogance already in him, and I think that was kind of like the vibe around. It's like, oh, we have a showcase, and we had a match, and it didn't completely go to shit, so now we're cool. And I'm like, I have to shut that down, And with him, I told him, I was like, you should get a gym membership. Because he doesn't look in bad shape, but I'm like, you need to tone out, get some mass, do whatever, because people want size in wrestling, like some kind of size. And in my head, I'm like, okay, a couple of months, and he'll like, okay, I'll probably get a gym membership, because he would ask questions. Within a week, he's like, hey, which one, if I get a gym membership, can I get the one to your gym so I can go with you and Evan? So he took it upon himself to take these steps way before I ever thought he would. And he's been going to the gym. We pretty much, the three of us have a schedule, so we all do our gym thing throughout the week. He eats well. He goes to training every single time. Doesn't make any excuses. And if he does, I shut it down. I told him, like, he's trying to take all this knowledge. And when I took over the academy classes, there was like a change kind of thing, to where a lot of people weren't coming in just because they didn't know what was going on. He's the only one that kept going. And he's improved. So whenever I would do like a California show or Vegas show, I would take him with me, and he's just gaining all this experience. And and he has big goals. And I'm like, if you want to reach these things, you have to do this work. And I've told him to, like, ask people, when you see people who have experience or a bunch of knowledge in the locker room, like, pick their brains if they let you. He's doing ICW now, so he has all the makings to be a star, and he's young. He's a 19-year-old kid. So I'm like, if you take care of your body, you don't do any dumb shit, and you keep working on yourself, I'm like, there's no doubt in my mind that you'll make it somewhere.
Sky's the limit.
Yeah. And I mean, he's taking it, you know what I mean? He's like, I don't like being arrogant or kind of saying, oh, I took this person. I don't like taking credit like that, but if I would claim anybody as my student, it would be him. And right now, with I'm helping the classes and building people up, so I'm hoping I can say more. But as far as in and out of the ring, he's definitely like my guy, and he's listened to everything that we talked about, and he listens to other people like a Steve, and anybody who has any knowledge, he'll soak it in, take it, and no excuses. And if he ever attempts to, I'm like, no. You know, so it's more than just the wrestling part. It's like, this is how you behave backstage. This is how we make connections, social media, everything. You know, I'm like, if you're tired, I'm like, you want to wrestle 4 days a week. So if you're tired from 2 days a week, I'm like, you know, so it's just every single thing. And I mean, he goes to school, so he has homework, gym, wrestling training, wrestling shows, and no excuses. So when I know people probably say, oh, you're biased, but I'm like, if you have this kid who's making no excuses and doing all this, what's your excuse? You know, like, oh, my job doesn't let me, or I have a baby. Like, wrestling doesn't give a shit about your job or your baby or your family or not. Like, I hate to break it to you, but wrestling doesn't care, because wrestling won't stop. And it's not going to wait for you to be settled and okay to do it. And I'm like, I always tell them from experience, I'm like, take it. Do what you have to do to get to that point, or take a baby step to that point. I'm like, stop with the excuses. They're not going to help you.
Yeah. Business doesn't owe you anything.
No, not at all, man.
I learned that right away. So you talk about being an influence for someone. Who are your influences as far as growing in the business? You've evolved from when I first saw you to where you are now.
Thankfully, because if I didn't, I'd walk out right now. I'm like, yo, you suck. No, obviously, Lawrence, I appreciate the different personalities that have helped like mold me, whether it was in a good way, whether someone just yelled at me and told me I fucking suck. In any way, shape, or form, I always try to take it. And I always tell people, I'm like, anybody who has taken the time to give me some knowledge, I consider it like a brick. And I've built this wall that is like me. Because I never wanted to, especially now, I never wanted to be someone. Like, I don't want to be Lawrence, or I don't want to be a Navajo warrior. Like, I want to be me, but by pieces of these people who have taken the time to like help me. And like, that's what I tell the guys now, or like a Bryce. And I was like, I know, like, I'm like, it's us two right now, like, but I want you to get pieces from everybody else that can teach you anything different, that or something I can't teach you, and just build who you are. So Lawrence obviously was one of the biggest ones, because I feel he helped me come out of my shell, and that helped me out of the ring as well, as far as just me being more confident, like, as a human being. So he's definitely one. Steve has been like my mentor for the longest time. I can go to that man for anything. He has helped me with opportunities that I never thought I would have ever had. So like he's my guy. Like, I know no matter what I do that he may find not smart or something dumb, or even if he says you should do this or you shouldn't do this, and I either do it or don't do it anyway, I know he's the guy who'll never be like, fuck you, I'm done with you. So like, I know I can trust him, and I know I can and will make dumb moves or dumb decisions, or he'll be like, don't do that, and then I'll do it and be like, I told you. You know, so I know they give me the freedom to like be me, but I know they'll always be there. There are two guys that I can always go to, and always going to be there. Morgan, same thing. Steve and Morgan, they're like, I pretty much say Steve and Morgan are like my wrestling parents. You know, I can always go to them whenever we do, like when we were doing championship wrestling or ICW. He's the first person I see, and I don't say, did you like it? Steve is pretty much like, this is what you got to work on. Pop, 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 pop. And Morgan comes in and is like, but this was good, this was good. So I get I think they call it a compliment sandwich. I get a good sandwich from both of them, because I get what I need to work on. And then I was like, fuck, I really suck today. And then she'll come in and like, but this was really good. Or Steve will say, the things I don't mention are obviously good, but we need to talk about what we got to work on, because we want to get better.
That's how you grow.
Exactly. So those three are big ones. As much as we may not see eye to eye sometimes, Dom and Gallo are big parts, because when we did share locker rooms, they took the time to either yell at me and tell me something sucked, but then afterwards will pull me aside and be like, you got to do this. You have to be this way. Gallo's a monster, obviously, so he'd be like, do this way, you know. Graves, as far as like our class, Graves I feel like was like the older brother of the class. So he was big on you got to do this. Don't let people do this because of your size, or really cool ways of like finding techniques of doing certain things. Just like the storytelling and the way he would explain it to you, like, would make so much sense. So I would throw him in that hat as far as just cool ways of doing things, and psychology wise making stuff make sense. And so it's just like all these different people. When I wrestled Simbodi, he pulled us aside and talked to us for a while with me and Evan when we were teaming up. So just the little tweaks he would say, and obviously he's been around and he knows his stuff. So talking to him, I wrestled Beer City Bruiser once, who's in Ring of Honor, and so I got to talk to him for like 45 minutes, an hour, him and Bob Evans, backstage. and just the knowledge from there. So there's so many people that I met backstage who have more experience who are better than me, and luckily I've had chances to wrestle people who are better than me that I can learn from in the ring and then talk to them after and just build this wall.
Okay, so with that being said, I mean, with your favorite influences and people, what about, like, what's your best match you've ever had? Like, you could look back
every
and say,
single one. Come
every
on,
single
Freemeyer.
one.
I'm just kidding. Oh, wow, that's rough.
If you had to pick one.
Tag team with Evan, I would say we wrestled the Reno Scum in Arizona, because we wrestled them twice. So the one here at the Nile Theater, it was like for one of the bigger Arizona shows. I don't know if it was 100 or 150. Too many shots to the head. But it was one of like the bigger shows, and we got them for the tag titles. And to me, on every aspect, from like the camera angles to the fans, the commentary, like the match itself, every single thing, experience-wise, I would probably say that's my favorite tag team match that we've had, was with them. And singles, oh man, that's rough. Well, it's not rough. It's a big one. I really liked my match with Beer City Bruiser, because that was one of the few times that it's rare when I get to wrestle guys who are as big or bigger than me. Plus, he had way more experience than I did, so like having that like Haas match was really fun to have. Man, I don't want to say too many because that sounds arrogant, but it's hard to just point out to like one particular match. I had a match with EJ Sparks when I had won the CWFA title and went to Hollywood to defend it. And we were the only Arizona match on that Hollywood card. And it was for one of their big shows, Milestone. And the feedback we got from that was awesome. Like the producers all loved it. Peter Avalon, who was producing Arizona, was like all about it. He's like, man, you guys showed that Arizona boys can hang here and like show people up. So just on those reasons alone, it's kind of the same thing. Like just from every aspect, that match I would say is one of my favorite ones, just because I felt we killed it. Everybody told us we killed it, and just the vibe was really good. Same thing with Ray Rosas in Hollywood. That guy is great to work with. Ray Rosas is like one of my favorite people to work with. And I've only worked with him a couple of times, but just everything just kind of flows. And that match there at Hollywood was one we had that was like a 15-minute match. So we were able to have like a full-on match, and that was fun. So if I had to pick those, I'd probably say that. Just from TV production and the people that work there, it's just like it's hard to not have like a good match. You know what I mean?
Do you ever have those instances where you have a match just totally sticks to the joint? How do you feel? How do you get out of that sometimes if you're in a situation?
I don't know if you do. You just either finish it or stop it.
Go home early.
I mean, there's been a few, like AWF. I've had a couple. I don't want to throw people's names out, but I did have one where me and the guy did not click at all. And in the ring, you can feel it, and it was just like, I'm not feeling. I think the words that were said, I was like, I'm not feeling it. Let's just go home. And at that point, you're just like, let's do it. And and that was like the beginning, because I was still like in like the beginning stages of everything. So I think in your mind, when you're new, if you feel you mess something up, I think in your mind it's like, oh, it just went to crap.
Done.
Yeah. But as far as like it literally going to crap and like people are just like, what the fuck is going on? Even that one, because I don't think anybody, the fans didn't see it. It was just like us in the ring. It was like, we just got to finish it. So they probably just saw like these two guys have no chemistry. That's probably what they saw. I did have one where I had to put some dude in an arm bar because he wouldn't listen. It didn't go to shit. I just kind of like put him in an arm bar and I yelled at his tag team partner in front of the crowd and like, break this up because I'm not letting go. So it was frustrating because someone wasn't working with you. So I've had those experiences where something happens and you just doesn't click. Actually, with my elbow, in my opinion, this guy is not ready to wrestle, and I was going through like a few of the new guys. There were like some new guys in this promotion I was working, and I was working like the newer guys, and like, hey, we're gonna give you this new guy, and then I get this guy, and just like on every detail, it was just would not cooperate, just on everything. And take away the whole elbow thing, just on every level, it was just like, no, that's not how you do that. That's not what you do. Chill. I think I had to say chill out like 6 times.
Was he very nervous too at the same time?
I think maybe part nervous. I also think part is that I think some people aren't told that they're not good when they need to be told, or you're not ready. I think that's like missing now. In a lot of places. I don't want to say every place, but a lot of places.
People are too sensitive.
And from what I can sense, because I don't know for a fact, but I feel like maybe he was either told or he thought he's at a certain point and no one's told him no, or they keep booking this person. So in their minds are like, well, I'm doing something right if I keep getting booked. So I think all those little things together just make this person seem like I got it, or it's good, or someone's telling them that they're good, and I don't know what the fuck, but like someone's lying to this person, and I think that just gave them like the confidence to think that they have stuff going on, and it's just watching it back, I'm like, no, it wasn't, and I feel I'm pretty nice sometimes, probably too nice. If I'm told by like I have been told by some people, and I try to give them stuff, and it just wasn't there. And then in that point, you get to that part when it actually happens, and your mind's like, do I beat the shit out of this person? Do I stay professional and just deal with it? So it's like a lot of people can ask you, it's like, man, it's like if this person did this to me, I would have beat the fuck out of them. But you don't know until you're there, because the only thing in my head, because I wear elbow pads, so as soon as I heard the cracks, the only thing that went to my head, I was like, what's under my elbow pad? Like, is my arm going to fall off? Is it just a quick sprain? Yeah. So I'm more worried about that than worrying about this dude. And this is towards the end of the match. So I finished the match and then just get the fuck out of here. And I started to do a promo, and I had to wrestle someone else for like a minute, like a WrestleMania 9 Yokozuna Bret Hart thing. And the first thing I wanted to do was take this off to see, like, is it going to fall off? So like, and then everybody's like, man, I would have done this, I would have done that. But you don't know. And I feel like I try to stay as professional as I can. Same thing with television. There was a situation that made me really upset at someone that I had to wrestle that day, and nothing was called. Everything was like a clusterfuck. And but in my mind, I was like, we're in television, we're timed, so I don't want to finish this early or say I'm not wrestling them, or just go and try to do this or try to start a fight on TV because it makes me look bad. So in that moment, you kind of realize, like, well, I'm just going to do the best. Like, that match was not good, but you kind of just go with it, because I'm like, I don't want to like just be like, oh, forget it, and try to like pin them or do whatever. And they're like, hey, you just missed like 15 minutes of television here for us, or do something on TV that's not professional. So I think I try to lean more towards that side. And afterwards, of course, I get pissed, and I'm like, I should have punched him or I should have done this. But I think that professional part takes over.
Yeah. Evolution in your career from when you first started, what do you do to keep changing?
I kind of just let it naturally happen. Like, I don't think I sit there and I'm like, okay, we got to change something up. I think if I feel something becomes stale, I'll try to make a little tweak. But I never want to change who I am completely. Like, I don't want to be like, okay, next month when you see me, I'm this brand new thing. So I always try to make something gradual. So like when I started, the reason I wear the hoodie was because I was doing camera for so long. So the way I started was like, oh, the camera guy's recording Super Rich, and then the camera hits Rich from behind. So then Rich is like, hey, the camera guy hit me. Who is it? So the guy with the hoodie, because I would wear the hoodie when I record too. So like, okay, this is why the hoodie exists. And to be honest, when I first started, I wanted to be Chris Jericho from WCW. I wanted to be like the whiner, goofy, the guy that lost. Yeah, I wanted to be like a goof, and I'm like, I want to have a chair. And every time I lose, I want to beat the post with the chair, but I always want to carry this chair. So it's just bent up, beat up chair. And it signifies how many times I've lost because it's so beat up. But they're like, you're too big for that. So of course they gave me this. You're more of a monster. You're more of a bully, stuff like that. And I was like, okay, I'll roll with it. And at first it was just generic, black singlet, shirt, sword 3, black kick pads, black hoodie. It was the whole normal thing. I think because of the story me and Rich had, I was able to do like the bully thing. So I was able to give myself some kind of like some kind of character. Because the first thing was like I stole his cape. So now we're like Bret Hart and what was it, Pierre, where they stole his jacket. Yep. So
Jean-Pierre Lafitte.
Yeah, so it's pretty much something like that. Yeah. And so I'm like, okay, now I'm like a bully. So that's cool. And did all that. Then I turned face because I dressed up as Santa Claus. You think that's when you did your talk show? You were doing like your talk show or something? Oh, so I dressed up as Santa, and I hit Dexter with his Bible.
Yes, I remember all that.
And that was my face turn. So like, oh, you're beating up the preacher, priest guy, whoever. And so it's pretty much just I was trying to do the old GTV stuff to where I would secretly record them.
I remember all this stuff.
Yeah, so that was my thing. I was like, oh, I'm going to be the guy who uses technology to his advantage, this and that. And then we lost like the building, so we had no screens or nothing like that. And
business changed for a little bit after that, I remember.
yeah, it was different. We tried a few things and it just didn't pick up from there. But then we made our way to AWF after that. And me and Evan teamed up for a couple of times, and then him and I decided, because at that point we were pretty much like best friends. But I think we both wanted to like see where we could go singles, because we were still so new to it, and neither one of us really thought of ourselves as a tag team wrestler. So we came into AWF, teamed up, and then I turned on him. Obviously, I turned on him, and then we had like a few month series. So it was like, oh, R3 now has like a new singlet and a new jacket. So it was, my tweak was just more like, I'm gonna change the look a little bit and be more aggressive than the first R3 that showed up with Super Rich. So we had like some gimmick matches and did that, and then kind of went stale there, to be honest, just with the stuff I was doing. And I'm like, I need to make a change. And I think that's when we started, like, Championship Wrestling came back, like the Tucson and all that stuff. So I started getting help from people to like, hey, what if you try this? What if you do this? So I kind of stuck with like the 3 R's. Like, now I'm going to make these 3 R's count and make it a part of the thing. And I was doing this whole like reality thing now, to where I was telling fans what I really think of them, or this and that. So I was like a reality check kind of R3. And then we go and me and Evan team up, which brought out the I don't say funny, but like the more humorous, more human being side of me, to where I could have a good time and we could goof around and stuff like that and still be business in the ring. So that's when we did the Brother Club, which the name was a mistake to begin with. And then we switched it off to Brothers of Wrestling. So that was fun, because then at that point, like, Party Hard was coming in. So we had a place to like show this off and do it. And I was able to show more of my side, because Evan had already kind of done that. Like, he was doing the dancing and all that stuff. So it's like, there's a chance for me to be the serious guy, but show that I can be funny, or haha. More real life, right? Like, I'm not the funniest guy, but if I have an opening for a joke, I'm going to take it. Yeah. So it's just more like that. So I was able to slowly be me. And then when we were Championship Wrestling, then we turned as heels. So they called us the Agents of Chaos. So now it's like, it was a test for Evan to be a heel, but be arrogant. And it was a test for me to go back to being like that bad guy, the more serious guy, and kind of take everything I learned into that. We did that for a while, which was really fun. So much fun. I think we had like a 1-year feud with Peter Avalon, which was just went in every direction, and it was probably one of the best things that I've done in wrestling. And that ended with a match with me and Pete, and then Evan was abducted by the tribe, so it left me alone again. And then I switched again. So now I got, because everybody thought I was going to be just R3, the one half of the tag team without his tag partner. And in my head, I'm like, I don't want to be that. So I got new gear made. You know, I had a new mask, because at that point we were doing those flimsy masks. Mm-hmm. So I got an actual mask, got a brand new jacket, and the jacket I had was like everything I've done combined. So like, I ripped up all the shirts and logos I've had, and I stitched them to my jacket. So just kind of like a combination at that point of everything. And my singlet was a tribute to Taker. So it was like purple, gray, silver, black kind of thing. So I came back, and then the promoters saw, and like, we appreciate that you've took it upon yourself to make these changes to improve yourself. You're not just the guy coming back with like orange and black, and now here's Evan's tag team partner. It's like, you completely changed, so you're you again. So that's when we started the Revenge Tour at Championship Wrestling. So it was just more aggressive, and it's like, I want revenge on any human being I can get my hands on. The thing with that was, I think the plan was I was supposed to be like their big heel, and people started cheering when I was beating people up. So they had to switch it, and we're like, well, they like you, so we have to put you with different people now to like build this up and develop this. And that was probably one of my favorite years, 2019. It was like, went undefeated, Championship Wrestling, took the title at the end. It was just such a cool story, television-wise, and it's cool because you get to see it. Like, if I go back on the old episodes, you get to see it all. And then now, honestly, now it's a combination of everything. The explanation for the one white eye is a personal experience I had with, I guess you want to call it a supernatural experience I had. So the whole half thing, half skull, half grunge, half normal, half eye, everything has to do with that experience that I've kind of brought into wrestling. And it's funny because they always tell you when you start, be you times 100. but I think everybody kind of wants to be something a little different. So now I always tell, especially the new guys, I tell them, I was like, as a heel, as a bad guy, I am everything that I hate about myself as a person. So every trait that I have that I'm like, I know that I possess, I push those. I'm jealous, I'm greedy, I'm this. And everything as a good guy, I am everything I wish I was. Because growing up, I was insecure. I'm a shy person. It was hard for me to speak. I would mumble a lot. And then learning English was very hard for me, so I got picked on a lot. So everything that I wish I was, and then watching wrestling and seeing like this over the top and just larger than life. So everything I wish I could be, push myself to be, is what I am. Because once I go out there, it's like a completely different person. So these are the two things, depending on which direction. And everybody tells you, be yourself. But I think we all kind of change and try to be something we're not. And now, finally, almost 10 years later, I feel like I am me. So now, after all this time, when you're like, who are you now? What have you evolved to? I've evolved to being myself, and like a genuine myself.
And speaking of that, your brand, Mental Thickness.
Yes.
Explain a little bit of that.
Came off from the working out thing. Like I would reach out to people, I would talk to people, and just in discovering my own journey and like making gym friends, I noticed that even like to me, the best looking people, like body wise, is physique and this and that, I noticed that they even had something to work on. And it was eye opening, because I was talking to this one guy who came up to me. He's like, man, I see you here and you're killing it. I see the changes just seeing you on a daily basis at this gym, blah, blah, blah. And it was very positive, because he's like, people aren't here to compete with like everyone else. They're here to compete with themselves. So that's why everybody looks in the mirror when they work out. They take these pictures because everybody's in competition with themselves. And I remember one time I asked him, because to me he had like a good physique, like he looks good. And one day I'm like, hey, what are you working out today? And he's like, oh, I got to get rid of this gut and do this. And in my head I'm like, what are you talking about? But then I realized that even if I feel this person looks good and doesn't have to do all that work, they don't think so. So I'm like, man, this is like everybody. So like even when someone would tell me, it's like, hey, you're looking good, my mind sometimes would be like, no, you're lying, or you don't believe it, because in your mind you're like, you don't see it, but then everybody else sees the changes. But then everybody goes through that. So just because you think someone's at a certain point doesn't mean that they think so, And it's a dangerous thing with body dysmorphia and all that. But you realize that everybody's in competition with themselves, and ultimately no one cares what you do at the gym. Like I know people see like videos of people making fun workouts, but I'm like, nobody's going to take the time to record a positive conversation. So the conversation this guy and I had, no one's going to be like, oh shit, positive, let me record it. Everybody wants to record the bad stuff because that's what gets put out. Mm-hmm. But I've never in person have ever experienced something like that. It's always been positive. Like, hey, can I help you with your form real quick, this and that, or a compliment. Like I personally haven't experienced that. So me going through these experiences, I was like, it's not as bad as I think people make it out to be. Or I want people who look like me or are scared or insecure to go to the gym or work on themselves. I want to let them know, hey, from my experience, you can do it and it can be done. And you could take someone who's super muscular, and you can take a bunch of like fucking big dudes and girls, and this person who's like all muscled out can be like, you got to do this, you got to do this. In reality, these people are going to look and be like, I'm never going to look like that, so why should I listen to you? But if you have someone who's like in the middle of this journey or starting it or feeling comfortable in it, and you put someone like me and we're like, hey, you can do this, I feel like they'll be more comfortable and they'll seem more realistic, because, oh, I can get to this point, or this person is like us and he's doing it, so I feel like we can. And that's why I say mental thickness, because a lot of it is a mental thing. It isn't just going to the gym and getting your muscles up. A lot of it's the mental aspect. I don't want to go to the gym, but I have to make myself go, because I know in the end I'll feel better. Or I can't think that everybody is looking at me when I'm doing this workout, because nobody is not. So it's more of that mental, and a lot of it is like with mental health, like whether it's depression, anything. Like I have depression and PTSD, so it's one of those things to where the other aspect is not making that an excuse, and because I feel some people I don't want to say take advantage, but whether it's on purpose or not, don't seek any help. So in turn, they don't know how to cope with it, and they don't want to get help. So in that aspect, they come across as people nobody wants to be around. But then when nobody wants to be around them, they're like, oh, nobody likes me because of my mental health. It's just this weird, this fucked up cycle. But I realize I'm a person I don't want to be around. And I'm tired of using my mental illness as an excuse for me to treat people like shit, or for me to not do anything for myself, or for me not to get better. And it's like, whatever happened to me as a kid isn't my fault. But whatever I decide to do now is my fault. And at a certain point, you have to get your shit together and just make it a thing, And at a certain point, I'm like, man, I'm too old to do this, or what does it matter now? But I'm like, I want to die healthier and happier than whatever happened. And obviously, the whole age thing is like, you can't let that affect you. So I'm like, you get to the point where I just need to stop making excuses. And I seeked help, the right help. I got my stuff together, and obviously, I have my bumps in the road. It's a never-ending battle.
Yeah.
But I don't want to be, there's that depressed wrestler with PTSD. I just want to be someone who happens to have these illnesses and happens to go through this stuff. But I don't want to be defined by it. And that was a big thing for me. And that's what got me more confident, more self-aware, getting into the gym. And that's what this whole thing's about. And like, for everybody, this isn't my way or my thing, or this isn't for big people. This isn't for just small people. This is for everybody. So I like to put in, like, what's Evan's story? Hey, what's your story? Because you were never like a fat kid. So like, what's your story and why do you like to get in shape? How does this affect you mentally? Like, I want everybody's perspective, but I also want to acknowledge that it's not just the physical health, it's mental health, and it goes hand in hand.
Speaking of growth and mental health and evolution of yourself, you recently came out as bi. Mm-hmm. So tell us a little bit about that.
Oh man, it's a long thing. Like, the first thing I wanted to do is figure out for myself, because there's a lot of things that happened when I was a kid, teenager, throughout my life. There's a lot of things that made me wonder, like, is it this? Is it this? Is it because of this? Do I even feel this? Is it like a normal feeling? Like, I didn't know anything. I had nobody to talk to, nothing like that. So it was just more like just kind of going with it. And then after high school, I had a girlfriend for 7 years. So everything just kind of went to the back burner. I'm like, these thoughts are just thoughts. It is what it is. Or experiments, you know what I mean? And afterwards, once all that happened, I think alone I started kind of figuring out, like, okay, maybe these aren't just like the experiments, or these aren't just like random thoughts. Maybe this is more than that. But I didn't want to like say something and then be like, oh, that's not it. It's something else. So I wanted to figure out for myself before I said anything. And then with wrestling was actually a big part why I didn't for so long, because, and not only because of this, because I know it's more accepted now, but part of it is like, I joke around. So I'm like, every dude I've ever joked around with is probably gonna be like, man, you wanted to fuck me. I was like, far from it. But I knew, like, am I gonna lose friends for that? Or anybody who ever made a joke to, am I gonna lose that? Or anybody who made a joke to me, they're gonna be like, whoa, or whatever. So that was a big one. And so still figuring out for myself, like, am I into women because I feel I should? Did I force that? Or am I? So I wanted to like figure everything out first for myself. And then the other part for wrestling was, like, I'm like this big, scary looking dude. So I'm like, how is this going to work? Because in wrestling or in general, like, I don't know anybody like me. And it was tough. Like, just the wrestling part was a big one. Because I know it's more open, you see people, but it was like, I never saw myself, like, I don't want to come out and then have to run around with like a rainbow flag. And there's nothing wrong with it, but I don't want to. Because I want to be me, And there's this wrestler, I hope I pronounced his name right. It's like Pero. He's at NWA right now currently. And this dude's a monster. He's a beast. And I found him on Twitter, I think, like one of his matches. And he is super open. Like, posts pictures with him and his husband constantly. And they're a super cute couple. And then you see him in the ring, and this guy is a destroyer. And he's black, red gear, and obviously, like, he is not, like, he's proud of who he is, so he'll come out with the rainbow stuff, but it's not like one of those things to where, like, he is still himself. Like, I feel like he is his own person. He's this monster. He comes out, and it's like, I saw him, and I was like, so I don't have to be anything else, or no one's going to ask me to be something else if I do this. And I messaged him, and we talked for a little bit, and watching because he did like a documentary thing, and listening to his story, like, helped me a lot, because I was like, oh shit, well, if this guy can be a fucking monster and still kill it, and I'm like, so can I. And then I also talked to AJ Kirsch. He's Hood Slam, the main ring announcer for Hood Slam. He was on Tough Enough 5.
Okay, yeah.
I talked to him on Messenger for a bit and got some advice from him, just like in general. Because, I mean, you see it out and you're like, oh, there's people that are out and it's fine, but it's like, it's not your experience. Yeah. So I'm like, and you don't know their experience. I'm like, they're here now, but how was that process? So I just wanted to figure it out for myself. And talking to some of the people I did was very comforting. And it was already kind of like making me more comfortable because it was like I kept it shut down, like everything. Like dating life, even if I dated like a woman, I kept it down because I'm like, I don't need anything spilling out. So just my entire dating life is going to stay wrapped in with me. So talking to these guys was super comfortable, and it was already like a huge step thinking about it now because I was talking to strangers essentially. And at that point, they knew about me. So like you have that fear. I'm like, man, are they going to tell someone, blah, blah, blah. And then so once I figured it out, like I seek my help and I'm talking to my therapist. I go to therapy.
I do too.
Talking to my therapist, I figure it out. So through that, I'm like, I need to figure out where I stand and like who I am. And then just went through that. And once I knew, I'm like, okay. I told Evan first, sent him a text, and he was cool with it. I'm like, this is going to fucking be like, I gave him the whole like, man, if you don't want to talk to me ever again, I understand, blah, blah, blah. And when I got home, he gave me a big old hug, and it's like, this doesn't change anything. And I wanted to tell my close friends first, because there's this music video I saw by a band called I Prevail, and their music video was them going through their struggle. So it was like home footage with like text, like explaining their story. I'm like, oh, this is pretty cool. And the lyrics, I related to the lyrics in my way with that story. Not their story, just more of mine. I was like, I don't know, for some reason it just clicked. And I was like, I think if I come out, I want to make my own music video to this song because it's just like, it fits. And I made it. And like 3 or 4 times I almost posted it and I didn't. And so at that point I told Evan, and then funny enough, every time at the gym, I got the confidence to like text somebody else. Be like, hey, just so you know, da-da-da. And yeah, I feel like at certain points, I'm better with text than I am in person. That's probably something I should work on. But I'm like, if I call someone, I'm like, hey, let's go to dinner. I'm like, it's going to come out stupid, or I'm not going to say it. So I'm like, I just got to send this. And I send it, I can't take it back. Yeah. So I told a bunch of close friends. And majority of women were like, I already knew. So I'm like, how? But like most people were like, oh, I didn't know, or whatever. And I mean, thinking about it now, it's like, well, what does that mean? You know? But anyway, I told a few people. And then one day, at the gym, I posted it on my personal Facebook, and I was like, I'm just gonna do it, screw it. And I think it was more of a scare of my personal, because that's where like my relatives and stuff are on. Mm-hmm. But I'm like, screw it, I'll do that. But I was more worried about wrestling than my relatives, to be honest, because wrestling is like my community, my life. I see my relatives whatever, whenever. So it was like, I care what they think, but these are the people I'm gonna see these people like in a week. So I put it up my personal, and then I started getting some messages. Hey, I heard this. So at the gym, I told Evan, I was like, should I just put it on the gimmick page? Because people are asking, and I don't want people to ask. People can ask me questions about it, but I don't want it to be like, I heard this. So I just want to like, fuck it, I'm letting the world know, or my world. So I shared it on my gimmick page, and I'm like, I'm gonna work out. I'm not looking at my phone. And then we got in the car, looked at it, and it's like flooded with a bunch of shit. And to my insecure surprise, it was all positive stuff, overwhelmingly positive. And I was like so relieved. I think that's when the weight like just like lifted off. Yeah, because like now everybody knows. Like it was a big weight when I told Evan, because he's like, I mean, I know we're like, oh, tag team, we're brothers and this and that, but like to me, I consider him to be my brother, so it's not necessarily just a gimmick. So that was like a big one. But then just seeing the text and the messages and all that and all the comments, I was like, wow, this is like really cool. And that's like a big weight. So, and then I know, because people say when you come out, you never stop coming out, because people will always ask. Like, I know last year, I'm like, hey, a year ago I came out and I posted a video, and then it was like, oh man, congratulations on coming out. So I'm like, yeah, that's right, you just never stop. And I told people, I'm like, questions are fine, ask me whatever you want. So at that point I was like, okay, I came out to these people, and I'm figuring myself out now. Yeah. Because now everybody's like, oh, so what are you gonna do? I was like, or like the questions, like, you know, what parts, because I think you ask yourself, like, what parts of me are actually me and what parts are me because I was in the closet for so long.
Yeah.
And even now, speaking now, I feel like majority of me is me.
Yeah.
Like, this is who I am. And that's why wrestling wise, I was like, I don't want to be portrayed as something I'm not. And so all that happened. And now I'm like, all right, now I got to figure myself out and find my place in this community and find out what the fuck's going on here. Because I never like joined groups. I never talked to people because I was scared of the history, the browser history. I'm like, oh, if I join a group, well, Facebook just put it out like, Charles is a part of this bisexual group. Join it now. I'm like, fuck. So like I kept everything away. And so now afterwards, I'm like, now I have to be in the community. I want to figure that out, talk to people, see the experiences, see what it's all about. And now I've learned more about that. And I told, because at first it was like, I don't want it to define me, this and that. But now I'm like, I want to help. Because again, I got messages from people like, hey, someone like you that came out makes me comfortable to do so too. So now I was like, well, I don't want to like hide it. Because that's what I fucking did for so long. So now I don't want to be like, okay, I'm out, guys, but not me, not. So I'm like, I want to put it out. I'm going to put it on my jacket. I'm going to put it on my knee pad. Like subtle things that I feel comfortable doing that I want to do. And if it's helping people that feel they don't fit the mold, like, and then makes them comfortable because I did it, I was like, I want that. So I will be loud about it. I will fucking say it to whoever. I will defend and fight. Because there's already, I mean, I know you know about biphobia. That's one of the big ones I heard. I was like, holy shit, dude. Like, I stepped into a fucking hole. One of the other things, too, is like, I have people who say, you know, it's hard because of what could happen or the violence. And that's kind of what I try to preach to people. Like, I know there's a big debate. It was like, oh, why do people get a Pride Month and this and that? And I was like, I don't think people want to have a Pride Month or Pride. Like, I don't think the reasons why they exist, I'm like, if there could be a reason to not ever have to have it again, I'm like, I think that's what we want. I was like, but you look at the fact that even being out and proud, there's always that little thing in your mind where it's like, should I show my same-sex partner's affection publicly? Like, if someone can look at us, no matter how out you are, it's always that little like thing. And I'm like, and that's not fucking fair. Yeah. You know, and I'm like, you see a hetero couple walk by, you're just like, oh, a couple holding hands. But then you see two women, two non-binary, two guys holding hands. And even if you're okay with it, you're going to look and be like, oh, and then continue about your day. But there's still going to be that little moment to where it's like, oh, that's not normal.
Or they should get a room or
something.
Yeah. And it's like, you know, it's a double standard for people. And it's, I get it, trust me. But, you know, some people are different. They're going to show affection. I think, though, in the coming years, it's evolved and people are just more bold. And I think there's more acceptance. But unfortunately, there's still that little part of people that are like, this is wrong, whatever.
Oh, yeah. And I think it'll always be there. But like I said, like I think, at least someone for me, I think the positive of someone that looks like me, which was funny because it was such a struggle to come out because of that. Now I'm like, well, I can defend myself. So it'll probably, just by looks and intimidation, there'll probably be less of a chance of someone doing something to me. So like if I can help protect in a sense or stand up for people, then I will gladly do it. So like I'll take on that responsibility to do that stuff. Because now, obviously I'm still discovering like the community and all that stuff, and it takes its time, but like I'm comfortable with myself. You know, the jokes were the first one, because now it's like, I remember going to the gym and I'm like, I don't know if I should say this dude's cute in front of Evan. Like, you have all these little insecurities, but then you just eventually just kind of
be yourself.
Just do it. And
I mean, it takes a lot of time. And how long would you say? I mean, you talked about this journey. How long was this journey altogether?
Oh man, dude, years. Like honestly, like between the therapy and just finding myself out. Like I knew at a certain point, even when I was dating my girlfriend at the time, I knew that I had an attraction to guys as well. But I'm like, is it just like a thing, an experiment? And I had experimented before I dated her. So that's why I thought, like, this is just a thing or whatever. And I'm like, well, are things that happened to me before the reason why? There was just a lot of stuff. It was like, was I born this way? Is it because of this? Is it because of that? So I was trying to figure that out. But at a certain point, I already knew I had an attraction. It was just more like, why? Is there a why, or am I born this way? Because I think at that point, you still had the whole, like, argument of, like, you chose it, blah, blah, blah. But it's like, do you choose to be straight? Like, did you wake up one day and was like, I'm straight?
No.
Like, no. So
I'm a firm believer you're born this way.
Yeah, I mean, I believe so too. And it's one of those things to where once I started getting like the therapy help and like using someone like that to figure this out, just in conversation, I think it clicked for me. I was like, okay, like, because it was like, well, are you attracted to women because you think you have to? or because you think it's like the norm part. And I was like, no, like I just am. So it's just one of those, like, you slowly figure it out. And then after that, I was like, I think before I actually came out, maybe for like a good 2 years, like I did like 2-3 years where I already knew. And at that point, it was just like, okay, I know. Now I'm just scared because wrestling and my super Hispanic heritage kind of thing, like macho growing up. So all these things, I'm like, I'll wait. Or honestly, at a certain point, it was going to be like, I'm taking this to the grave. Like, I'm sure I'll have some kind of secret relationship with someone if it ends up being a dude. And if it ends up being a woman, great. I don't have to say anything. That was my whole mentality. And then I think it just kind of, it eats at you. You know what I mean? And like, and part of me was like, I think it was one day where I sat there and I'm like, I kind of want to experience what it would be like to date a guy. Just that, I'm like, and I don't think I can do that in secret. And it's kind of fucked up because I did talk to people, like have like friendships with people like that. Who there was one guy who like came out and he's like, we should do it together and this and that. And it was just, it was like, it really hit me because I'm like, this is fucked up for me to like want someone to also hide it when they're ready to because of whatever. And so like little things like that kind of kept pushing it. And then wrestling wise, like talking to like AJ and Pero and all that stuff like that honestly helped me. It's crazy that it was like people you don't know, like people you're connected to through wrestling, but people you don't know that like push you and be like, it's fucking okay.
What are your goals, future goals? What's the future look like for?
Man, they've changed
R3?
To be honest. See, I started training when I was 28, so I'm like an old bloomer. And one of the compliments I do get is when guys ask how long I've been around, I tell them like 8 years. They're like, man, you come across like you've been around longer. So either they're calling me really old or they're saying I'm good to the point where I seem like I've been around longer than expected. And I think part of it has to do with just like life experience. So I didn't have like, I'm a young 20-year-old who's gonna act like an asshole in wrestling. Like I think I already kind of knew my place or knew how I wanted to act and how I wanted to be. So. But now I think, like I still want to travel out and wrestle more, but honestly, I'm kind of leaning more towards, like I've always been like a backstage guy as well. Like, I mean, you know, I've always liked the production and the editing and all that stuff. So like to me, I'm like, I don't know. So like if an opportunity came up to where I could go somewhere as a wrestler, great. But I think I'm slowly winding down to the point where I don't want to like drive myself for that, and not in a bad way. Like I still have a drive, like I'm still going to the training and I still want to travel out more. Like I'm like, I need to get out and do, you know, like do tours or do whatever and just get out and experience more wrestling and wrestle people that are better than me and continue to get that. But I want to do that more to help younger people, because I think when my body can't do the wrestling thing anymore, I want to like help people, like help develop people, whether it's on a training thing or helping someone train someone or whatever. Like I enjoy that part. So I want to get more experience so I can give them more experience so they can get better until they go along to someone else who knows more than me, and then they get knowledge from them, you know. So I think that's my goal. Like I want to get better for myself, obviously. And if an opportunity came, I'm like, I'm taking it. But at this point, I'm like, I feel like I got like maybe a good 5 years of in-ring time, and I want to take advantage of that and make the best out of it in my journey, and then get all that knowledge and then use it to develop new people. And because I always want to be in wrestling, no matter what. You know, if in the future I could like do a producing job or an agent job, like I would love to do something like that. Promoting is a fucking stressful thing, but even that, like I've dabbled in like promoting shows and stuff like that. So anything in that realm, I would love to do. But as far as the actual wrestling stuff, I think the next few years I want to like really push myself, because I know there's not much left as far as like just time wise, you know. And I'm feeling better. Like I feel now that I did 10 years ago, like just working out, getting to the gym. Steve's gotten me liking the strongman stuff.
I see that
so
all
like
the
I'm
time.
slowly kind of going into that world. So like I want to, and this is something I never did. You even told me 5 years ago that I would even think about doing some strongman shit. Like absolutely fucking not, you know. And I still have a long ways to go. The biggest thing that I realized was that, and Hammerstone actually posted a thing about it the other day, was like, this work isn't like 10 weeks or 10 months or whatever. Like, it's not like, it's like a lifestyle thing. That was the best thing for me to realize, was make it a lifestyle, go at your pace, and just feel better, you know? And that's what I'm doing, like just dabbling in like this strongman stuff. Like, to me, just feels good. Continue to work on myself. The gym will always be a part of my life, I feel now. And wrestling wise, like, I want to future, once I'm done in the ring, I want to help develop new people. That's what I want, because I feel I have something to offer, at least until they can go to the next step and do that.
What advice would you give to someone, especially who's on the fence about coming out? Or
don't, just kidding.
yeah,
coming out,
if they're gay, bi, whatever.
I would say fuck everybody and do it. I mean, it's rough because it has to be at your own pace. Do it at your own pace, but do it when you are ready, not when you think everybody else is ready, not when you think you should. I know like this month was like Bi Visibility Month, and then June is Pride Month. So like, I know those months, because there's so much positivity in that aspect comes out, like it helps people to push out.
Softens the blow.
And I think that's fine. Like, I know people like give it shit because like, oh, everybody's coming out because it's Pride Month. No shit. Like, this helps people. Yeah. It's the same thing with like any movement. When you see people that you relate to that are doing them, like, well, it makes me safer to be able to also express myself.
You have that zone.
So if that's what it takes, if it takes like a June or a September or anything to do it, do that. But ultimately, honestly, the best when you are ready. And that's it. Not when you think your parents will accept it, or when you're like, oh, I'm going to move out and that's when I'll do it. I mean, whatever you think is the safest. But when you're ready, like, it's hard because it's just everybody's going to have their own pace. And I hate to see it because I see videos of like parents like abandoning their kids and like, this is not what it is, or this is a choice. I hate that. And I understand like the fear of that. So it's more like, if it takes for you to like not be in that environment to be ready, then fine, you know. I will say, for people who are like, I'm never gonna let this out, I'm like, that is probably one of the best decisions I've ever made for myself, because I was the person that was like, I'm taking it to the grave. And from someone who thought the world's gonna fall apart the minute I did, it was the opposite. So if anybody's wondering like, oh man, my friends or this or my sports team or whoever is going to hate it, I was like, for me, especially these times, I'm like, for me, it was the complete opposite. And it was, if anybody had anything negative to say, they didn't say it to my face. And at that point, I don't give a shit. And if they said it to my face, I don't give a shit. Because at the end of the day, I think overall, as a human society, we care too much about what people that don't matter think. And I've gotten to the point where, I'm sure you've heard me like post this or say it, but I always say, I would rather have 4 quarters than 100 pennies. And that motto has helped me with like cutting people out. I mean, therapy has helped me a lot with that. So it's just like, if someone brings value to me and I bring value to them, I want you in my life. And if you don't, no hard feelings. I don't care. You know, like, I don't want it. And I've gotten pretty good at separating that for the most part. And part with the coming out is, if someone doesn't care, it's like, cool, bye. You'll find yourself with a bunch of people that will accept you. You'll find people that will accept you for who you truly are in that aspect. And I know they say like, oh, you'll find out who's really there for you when you do it. But it's, I mean, cliches are called cliches for a reason, because they're fucking true, and that's what it is. So I would just say, whenever you are ready, do it. And anybody who doesn't accept you, fuck them. It's easier said than done, but it'll be the best thing for yourself, because this stuff will eat you alive. And you don't know how freeing it is until you actually like do it. And I promise that it will be ultimately, maybe not in that exact moment, maybe not when your parents or someone's telling you to fucking that you're this or you're that, but ultimately you will feel so much better than when you did. And if you have people like that around you, then fuck them good, because that'll get rid of all the scum you have in your life anyway. So honestly, and no matter what you look like, no matter if you think you fit the mold or you don't, just do it. And it doesn't matter what your sexuality is, it's fine. You can be bi, you can be pan, you can be trans, whatever you want to do, just do it, man. We don't have much time. You know what I mean? So do whatever makes you happy. and the right people that will help make you happy or keep you happy, or you'll find happiness from and you can give happiness to, will find their way to you eventually.
With that being said, thank you for joining me.
Thank you
It was
for
a
having
pleasure.
me.
This has been another edition of Beyond the Top Rope. I'm Justin Freemer. We'll see you next time.